So, I'm so proud of what the Not All Gays team have put together for us today. The first session is about safeguarding, specifically focused on obviously how children are getting sucked into this. So, if I can have my panelists here, we have Annaig Birdy, the president of Nagging, Seán Atkinson, who's very vocal about the harms of this, particularly for children, and Iseult White, feminist, writer, and psychotherapist. Right. The session will last about 30 minutes, and then we'll go on to the good, the bad, and the GRA. Enjoy.
Hey, I'm going to get started with a little presentation that I put together. And it's about, safeguarding issues coming from the LGBTQIA, LMNOP, whatever movement. And as we know, there's many different aspects to this. There's a damage to women's rights, safety of children, indoctrination, grooming. There's age gaps within groups, which is what I'm going to focus on, as well as before NAG and what we've done since we've set up. As many of you have seen, Annaig's article and my whistleblower interview focused on Belong To and our experiences there, what we witnessed, and the impact that made on us and other young people. Before Not All Gays, though, Annaig has been going after Belong To like mad. She's done great work. In 2021, she met with the Niall Mundule from the Ombudsman to talk with, along with a teenage transitioner, to talk about what she witnessed and how they basically indoctrinate young people into this ideology. She's spoken to journalists at Women's Declaration. She's appeared on live streams and podcasts talking about this. And then eventually she wrote a letter to Micheál Martin where her safeguarding concerns about Belong To and what she witnessed. And in this letter she talked about the indoctrination again and said that out of all the trans people she knew in attendance during Belong To, since they left, 81% of them desisted. And the result of that, after contacting 9 times, he blocked her email, and after being sent to all these different people, just completely blocked. And then Not All Gays was born. 9 of us came together. 4 of our 9 co-founders were ex-Belong To attendees. And there's a large focus in our group on safeguarding women's rights and obviously saying that gays don't stand with all the stuff going on. And within 2 months of setting up, we were mentioned in the Shannon debates against hate speech laws because we knew we had to go after that and say not all gays agree with this because it was being pushed in our name. And then Annaig appeared at Let Women Speak, where she spoke about Belong To and all the things going on, and it was our first public appearance as NAG. Annaig finally put a face to our group. And then she got an interview with Andy Nyo, Mark Tighe, Joe Bartos. She appeared on Gays Against Groomers' Dark Side of the Rainbow. And eventually Annaig and another member of Not All Gays met with a senator, who I won't name, to speak about what went on. Nothing really came of it for a while. He was kind of going after them, and then it just kind of went all quiet. And later we appeared on DJ Lippy's Make More Noise to talk about both of our experiences. And as a result of that, Belong To left Twitter. They wiped our website from their 3-minute guide to female-to-male transition, which included links on where to buy binders. They scrubbed it with all the information they were bringing into schools, such as tuck-in, bottom surgery, which doesn't include anything about the implications of this. Completely removed it. Thankfully, Annaig spent, I'd say, about 6 years of our time archiving absolutely everything on their website, so we have evidence of all of it. And since then, I've spoken out on a whistleblower interview. Some of you might have seen. Rip wrote an article about it. Then I spoke at the Natural Women's Council about the different things Belong To are telling students, and then the reality of the situation, the reality about bottom surgery and the damages binding can do. I remember there was a case of a drag queen who was taken, and he got such a bad testicular torsion that he had to get his balls amputated. But these are the kind of things they don't warn kids about. They just come at it like this is completely safe. And, it's fine, it's a way to pass, and nothing of what could happen. But my biggest thing with Belong To is the youth group age gaps, which, as you can see, all over the UK and Ireland mainly, the age gaps go from as low as 13 to 30. And you wouldn't see that with Scouts, you wouldn't see it with any other type of youth group, but for some reason Belong To and all these other groups think it's completely acceptable. And as I've said before, when I was in that environment, I seen the damage that can do. I seen adults take advantage of young people. I was brought to nightclubs, I was bought alcohol, and without belonging to creating that environment, I wouldn't have met these adults. The other young people I knew wouldn't have been in those situations and have had, trauma as a result of it. So I don't know why it's acceptable. I don't know why these groups think it's okay, but we really need to stand up and put an end to this completely. And another thing they do is the LGBT movement has a thing with platforming people who are obviously, child abusers, and we look the other way because historically we know gay people were called paedophiles and so on. But now people are afraid of that association. So when there is actually a paedophile in their midst, for some reason it's brushed under the carpet completely. We see people like Peter Tatchell, who is a paedophile apologist, get platformed time and time again. And I don't know why, we shouldn't. I think as a movement, we've seen what can come from that. We need to just say no and really go against it because it's wrong. And it doesn't mean all gays are paedophiles. It doesn't mean that we should be associated with them, but I think it makes us look worse if we don't put a stand against it and call these people out. And as well, David Norris, he did great work in Ireland when it came to gaining LGBT acceptance, but he also wrote a letter to the Israeli government about his ex-partner asking for clemency after he had sexually assaulted a 15-year-old boy. And he's, like Peter Tatchell, argued for the age of consent to get lowered. So I think it's important we all stand against people that do this. We have to stop avoiding this conversation. And, David Norris last year was given an award for this. And we're platforming these people, we're awarding them, and we're completely brushing everything else under the rug. It's just completely wrong. We really need to just put an end to it. And that's my biggest issue with the whole movement.
Yeah, I think it is very important, to recognise that there are people who've done really good work, and we can say, yeah, they've done good work, but also we can't ignore, just because someone has done good doesn't mean that we can ignore the fact that there is that element of a risk of, not saying everyone is a paedophile, but kind of ignoring it or asking for clemency in that situation, that's, in my opinion, unacceptable. And without going on about that. But about belong to, and I started speaking up because I went, hold on. They're telling young children, and they're very vulnerable children. When I attended, and I recognized it for what it is because, and I've been very open about this, so it's no secret, I was dealing with my own mental health issues, eating disorders, and self-harming, so I knew what I was looking at, but I was getting help outside of belong to. But these children were going, and it's kind of framed as a gay club, and you're going to meet other gay people, and I thought maybe I'd find a girlfriend, or whatever, or other lesbians, and you go into belong to, and you're forced to use pronouns, and you're very vulnerable. You're looking for friends, you're looking for companionship, and you're made to use this language immediately. And I didn't know anything about that shit at the time. I was just like, what do you mean I have to say I'm she, her? Is it not obvious? But it's very, this very high control and high fear in belong to and the other youth groups. From talking to other young LGBs who've gone to the ones in the UK and in Scotland. Sam Cowie, he has spoken out about what happened to him, which was actual sexual assault and grooming in that way. But the ideological grooming is really so intense. And you go in, you're looking for friends, maybe you have homophobic parents or whatever, or you aren't out yet to other people. So you're going to look for friends, and you're told that you can't talk about gay club outside of gay club. You're to pretend that you don't know anyone in the group if you see them out on the street. That's just strange. But they also know that you're meeting up with adults who are attending the group, because the groups are 13 to 23, but over 23s were coming in as well. Sometimes bringing alcohol into the groups, and nothing was really done about that either. And the language as well amongst your peers, it was very much those fucking cis hets. So it was this language of ew, if you are not trans-identified, non-binary, gender fluid. I'm a dog. Or in one situation, there was a young, she's very mentally vulnerable young woman or girl at the time who was identifying as a rodent, and that was apparently somehow got to do with my rights as a lesbian. But needless to say, I did not meet any lesbians that I wanted to really hang out with outside the group. But it was this kind of fear, and you're being told that the outside world is really scary. Your family aren't going to accept you because you're gay or trans-identified, and that you aren't allowed to talk about it, about anything. You shouldn't read anything that's not kind of belong to approved. It is very, and I know has been kind of discredited, the BITE model by Dr. Hassan, but this behavior, information, thought and emotion control, that it's really high fear. This language, like real vitriol for cis, het people, but also cis. So that meant me. Yeah. And it's like you can't then, you're just made to feel uncomfortable and you're outcasted. And they are telling children about, and like I have it all archived, belong to. I have everything, everything archived. But they had like information on their website before my article came out, and then they decided to wipe it and pretend, oh no, we never said that. We never said about binding, which can cause like serious damage to your back, your ribs. But telling young teenage girls who were anorexic and bulimic, like some of them actively purging in the youth groups, in the toilets, they'd come out with like bloody knuckles. And actively self-harming, and they weren't getting support at all. They were just told, oh, well, that discomfort you might be. Or in Seán's case, he was told that he might not be a boy because he didn't really like sports.
By a youth worker. Oh, sorry. But going on what Anneg's saying, like the majority of people in Belong To, they were very mentally ill. Like there was a lot of people who had attempted suicide during their time in Belong To, not necessarily because of that, from other aspects. And these are the kind of people that would tend to fall into these youth groups, people that need support. But instead of getting the right support, they're kind of getting this fear-mongering on them that the whole world is out to get them, and you know they're going to have to suffer because they're trans or because they're gay, and it's just this really dark world.
And that Belong To is the only kind of safe space for them. So it's this real, like, controlling, culty kind of, you can't talk about it, you have to use our language, you can't look at things outside of it. Oh, don't read that because that person is a TERF. But they're very vulnerable going in, and then but they're saying that they're the only safe space, so you're not allowed to talk about it outside. So it is very Scientology kind of like similar vibe, but it's just horrendous. And they are going in and telling, like my first one, before I hand over to Iseult, but my first attendance in Belong To, they made us all say our pronouns. And I was like, oh, I'm just a lesbian. And I didn't have like all of these other things like demisexual, whatever. But they were telling children in the youth groups how to order binders and hide it from their parents, saying, oh, maybe get it delivered to your friend's house or get it delivered to us and we will give it to you. So they're actively telling children how to get this, sneaking it around their parents, saying, don't tell your parents that you're coming to Belong To either. So if anything happens in Belong To, there's this level of fear that you can't say anything because you're not really meant to be there. That's the situation. So but it has led, and we know several people who were like actually sexually groomed in Belong To as well because they were mixing 23 plus with children.
There was one occasion where Belong To did an overnight stay down the country, and they put all the young people in the same room. So that included boys and girls, and some of them were over the age of 18, and no one was supervising them. And I know someone who attended that. Nothing happened, but like you don't know what could happen in an occasion like that, especially when there's adults who aren't being vetted, being brought in. And the vast majority of adults that would come to Belong To were men. There was like one or two older women. The rest of them were all, men that were 22 to 24.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's been a sort of a societal, cultural thing in that whole thing, because we're presenting the rainbows as sparkly, as fun, and what I would say is a lot of normies out there really don't understand the level of sexual grooming that's going on underneath. That's off, you know. That's going underneath all of these things. So I think there's a mixture of two things happening. There's vulnerable kids are attracted to the LGBTQ thing as a way of belonging, who are not necessarily same-sex attracted kids originally. So there's a lot of neurodiverse kids and a lot of kids with mental health issues who feel on the outside, and this is a path into the inside. But then there's also, of course, lesbian, gay, and bisexual kids who are beginning to try and explore their sexuality, trying to understand who they are and where they fit in a world that still doesn't really present them with just ordinary positive images of teen kids growing up. And also they don't have access to maybe other kids. So they're vulnerable to online grooming. And if you take this right back to Tumblr, which I always say is the beginning of all of this, you know, Tumblr as a platform, which was, you know, a platform where so many of these new identities developed on Tumblr, but there was a massive grooming and pornography rife on Tumblr, and a lot of self-made pornography and self-made child sexual abuse material. So the platform was really, really known for this. And when that platform in 2018 had to clamp down on pornography, which was also basically the end of Tumblr as a platform, really, in many ways, all of that went further underground. And so the sites for serious online grooming, which is what I had wanted to talk about today, is through multiplayer user games, and then into Discord servers. And you have older people grooming, running these Discord servers. Once you're invited, it's exciting for a kid to be invited onto a Discord server to hang out with a bunch of other kids. And then all of the typical grooming stuff happens, where they're asked to produce sexually explicit sexual abuse material. Then they're kind of the whole gender thing is coming in there as well. And we can see, and again, there's no research on this, so I'm always a bit cautious when there isn't research, but I can see anecdotally a lot of trans-identified females moving quite quickly into porn and into home-produced porn and into OnlyFans accounts. And I often see that there's a trans-identified male who's their master or whatever, and moving very much into kind of BDSM, fetish. And there's been a number of detransitioners who've come out to speak about these things more recently, and the level of grooming into kink-oriented sex. And I watch normies look at Pride and go, oh, isn't it cute, those people with the furry costumes on? And do you not know? And of course they don't know, which is part of the problem. How deeply embedded now in this new culture we're living in, where pornography has had such a massive impact and where online has had such a massive impact, how deeply embedded in fetish, bondage, all of these kink areas that these youths are growing up into. And you know, I've worked with detransitioners. You know, I mean, I'll just give you one country where the only sexologist that could sign off on their transition used to demand that all of the people who were transitioning give that sexologist a naked photo. But that was the only entry into getting transition. So this is just rife through the whole area. And I don't see any of our NGOs really pursuing this and really looking at research on this. And young lesbian, gay, and bisexual kids and young adults are more vulnerable because they're trying to find themselves. Somebody a bit older offers them ways to explore their sexuality, is kind to them, makes them feel at home. Then they're very easy to take advantage of. And I'm delighted to be able to say that we're here wanting to talk about that and open it up as a topic of conversation in the community.
And can I just add,
Can I just add that when me and Annaig, like, we knew each other when we were young teenagers, but when we became friends was because we were, on Facebook, and she was like, oh, I knew he went to belong to, and we were, arguing about bathrooms. So it was like, oh, another turf, But she invited me on her podcast to talk about belong to, and a lot of, what I realise now I didn't even realise at the time. I was just like, these people were like, you ask them a question, they go crazy at you, and it was very focused around that. But when I was thinking about, the adults that were buying me drink and everything, I always thought of it as like, oh, it was just cool. Like, all the older people wanted to hang around with me. I never thought of it like they were trying to groom me or anything. So we need to give people time when they kind of come out of that to kind of, whether it's detransitioners, people who come out of youth groups, people who are victims of things, it takes them a lot of time to kind of realise what actually happened. Like, I've spoken to people who've really suffered trauma from belong to, and they don't even think of it as that. And it's really like, how do you tell them? You can't really tell someone like you were abused. They kind of have to come to that themselves. It's really difficult to get them there, I think.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point, and it's like any kind of sexual abuse and grooming. It takes a long time to understand what you went through, and it is often a very long journey for people who've detransitioned, because often, in my experience in working with detransitioners, and it's of course not true for all, but there has been a history of grooming in there as well, and coming to terms with maybe things that you did as a kid and the fact that there's material out there, child sexual abuse material of you out there, which is also a huge trauma.
Yeah, I think on the CSAM, that a lot of people, like even my age group, I know a lot of girls who at the time, like, would have been 15, 14 even, who were posting even on Tumblr pictures of themselves in their underwear and stuff. But like, then to come to terms with that when you're an adult and go, oh my God, that was child sexual abuse material, and I was posting it. And like, how do you reckon that? It's kind of difficult. And I also think that it is really important for when there's people coming out of these youth groups or the Discord servers or any of this where it's like ideological grooming or in fact sexual grooming in terms of LGBTQ, that we are acknowledging it and saying it, because I think that's no one wants to talk about it, because then we all know here that they scream homophobia, etc., and then no one wants to be seen as homophobic, so everyone is scared to say anything. But we have to remember that there's going to be a lot of people in the next few years who are really coming to terms with what has happened to them, that they went down a path that they can't really come back from, or in fact that they were sexually abused by this or sexually groomed online through LGBTQ servers, and we have to prepare for that and to be able to go like open our arms, because we can say, oh, these people are being ideologically groomed, but then when they come out of it, we need to be there, because we can't just go, okay, well, that was you bought into it, you were a TRA, you were mean to me, you called me a homophobe. We have to be there for those, like, especially there's going to be a lot of young women who have facial hair and their breasts removed and possibly their forearm hacked, damaged, and the nerves. We have to be ready for those people, those women especially, that have to come to terms with like their bones, joints being damaged by testosterone and all of the rest of it. Like, we can't just say because they were TRAs and they attacked us and said, called us turfs or bigots or whatever, and wished us all the worst things and dying in a grease fire and whatever other stuff they say on Twitter. We have to be able to go, yeah, you were being ideologically groomed, and it's usually by a trans-identified man at the top point of it.
Yeah, and just sort of finally, it's letting other normie adults know, like parents know, like if your kid's hanging out on the Discord server, kind of what are they doing on a Discord server, right? I just see so many adults and parents who really don't understand what that online environment is like for kids. But as a professional, as a psychotherapist, I also see so many normie psychotherapists not able to ask kids and young adults the questions you need to be able to ask them so that they can start to talk about the things that have happened, and to be able to do that in a non-judgmental way. And there's no need for judgment here, but just to create a space where people can begin to explore the things that have happened to them. And that's one of the issues that I see that our our organisations, our therapists, etc., really don't understand the world these kids are living in, and then it's painted as this happy clappy, you know, your gender journey, your journey into the alphabet. We're all here, we're queer, we're having so much fun. And there's such a seedy, dark underside to it, which, as all of us who've been around for a long time know, has always been there alongside us in the shadows, as much as we've tried to bring it out, but it's always been alongside us. And when I say to straight people, well, oh my God, paedophiles have been trying to infiltrate Pride and the gay community forever, and they look at me like I'm a homophobe, and I'm it's just ridiculous when it's so documented.
Cheers. Thanks very much, everyone.